So, Bill Hamish Harvey are tiny. It's me, my dad, and a programmer. I hope we're going to get a bit bigger soon. But we specialise in masonry bridges in particular. We do a few other bits and pieces, but the core is masonry bridges that we study. We're always looking for new. Okay. Detected me as that just going to go pocket and not cause trouble. So we're looking for ways to understand damage better. And in masonry, that is an interesting challenge. And in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work on developing photogrammetry, which we believe has the potential to transform inspection and assessment of historic bridges and all masonry bridges, but really all masonry bridges are historic bridges. I don't need to tell most people here, I think, much about photogrammetry, so I've cut out all my usual slides. The basic process is you take a lot of photos with lots of overlap from different angles, you process it into a model, and then you profit from the results. The reality is obviously a bit more detailed. I'm not going to talk about processing. The basic trick that we have here is a big workstation reality capture, which is fantastic. Taking photos is more of an issue, and how we get information out of the data that we produce is the second part. A couple of case studies. Pontypridd Old Bridge was built in 1750. It was the fourth attempt that William Edward made. He was given a 7-year contract to cross the Taff at this point. He built the first attempt was a 3-span which was washed out by a flood, so he thought, well, sod that, I'm not going to put piers in the next one, I'm going to go one step. That one, the centering collapsed before the bridge was finished. Not being put off, he did it again, did the centering a bit better, successfully struck the centering, and 6 weeks later the bridge collapsed. And it collapsed in a particular way, with the crown bursting upwards and the sides going in. So he then gathered a little bit more money together from the gentry of the area, who must have been quite compelling, or maybe it was the fact that he was a well-respected preacher that got him that support. But anyway, he added these transverse tubes at the sides that weight out, and if we look at the top later, we'll see there was additional weight put onto the top, and it's been there since 1756. In the 100 years later, they built this bridge alongside. It's been widened since, and now it runs to about half a metre from the south elevation. So since 1850, no one has seen the south elevation as a complete view. Capturing photographs of this, what we're aiming to do is to get sub-millimetre detail of the whole structure. It's big, it's 43 metres span, it's all rubble masonry, lots of roughness, lots of detail. The crown is about 10 metres of water. Victoria Bridge is very close, which has pros and cons. And at least it was a ford here, so in the driest summer in recent years, it was perfectly possible to walk back and forward underneath. And we ended up with 14,000 photos. That's taken straight from reality capture, and reality capture can take 14,000, or indeed I've just discovered 30,000 photos and align them. 30,000 took me within the natural of 226 gigabytes of memory. But it just does it. It's awesome. And you finish up with a model that allows you to step back and look. So this is the south elevation. No one has seen that for 170 years. In this view, it's a slightly simplified model. There's about 5 million triangles with very high detailed texture. The simplification of the mesh means that the texture is just slightly blurred on these rough surfaces. But we can zoom in and see cracks, and we can see details that we wouldn't really understand in a set of photographs. The standard product from bridge inspection is a bunch of detailed photographs saying there's this issue here. full stone. So being able to understand that damage in context is transformative. Being able to produce full orthographic elevations that allow you to measure things, and being able to zoom into that level. For some reason, it's not quite as good on the software, which is annoying because it's a lot difficult to see, but it's still pretty good. You can see individual bits of spiders of it on point there. But on collection, we don't use drones. We don't have the scale to justify, we can't get the utilisation that justifies the licensing costs. And anyway, I've yet to come to a bridge and find that half of it isn't inaccessible to a drone. There are trees, there's another bridge next to it, it's next to traffic. There's so many reasons. Here, it would be useful for some bits of it, but we would have had to deal with this stuff anyway. So there we are, standing in the river, we've got some lead weights attached to the bottom of the pole for balance, and get up to about 8 metres. Different bridge, we can stick it out over the side and do elevations as well that way. And we have camera rigs. So this is a set of Sony QX1 cameras, all strapped to a 6-metre beam, triggered and powered on a wire, so they trigger almost simultaneously. And they don't all. If you have them batteries, and there's always one that's running out of battery. You can't take it in and change the battery. The power comes from the cable. Here it was easy to set up because we could walk into the springy. In other places we've ripped up that beam, swung it over the side, pulled it up to do something with no access. And why bother? It's a lot of effort. But the ability to zoom in and see that detail and then step back and see where it is and keep doing that in the office where it's warm is just unmatched. But the problem is we get a lot of data. We don't need the data, we're looking for understanding. Just having a model is a step forward, going up that hierarchy, but we have a pipe where you've got vast amounts of data, the accessible information is remarkably low. Convert that into a mesh, you bring the data level down and get more access. Photogrammetry gives you in a much better place, and just having a model to look at is good, but we need to be able to interrogate them and extract information, to learn the stories they have to tell, and then also to share those stories with other people. So we've been working on a viewer with a few simple tools that help us take a model and actually say what's going on here. Very quick look at an 1830s canal bridge first, and then a bit of a look at some bolts in the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Slightly sad, which is very faint for me. It's just a standard canal bridge. You can see cracks here. About an hour on site in 2000 photo, but as this and gives us this level of detail that we can see into every crevice, we can see all the lost bricks, and we can see how this joint is opening up and there's a brick drop here. And we can look around it. So far so good, but we need to understand what's happening. Why is there a brick drop here? What's going on? And what we can do with the viewer is to say, well, we know there's something funny at the crown. Let's put in a plane, a horizontal plane, through the point. And it gives us an immediate contour. So this is using the shading engine. We can see the intersection, and we can see that it's lower here, that there's a hard step at this point. And this edge is also low, but not nearly to the same extent, so it doesn't spread across the edge, it's just right at the edge. And all of that lets us start to really get an understanding of what's going on interactively. So we could contour this, we could say, well, we've got a mesh, we're going to do a set of contours, but we've got to decide what contours and what spacing. With this, you just go put it in play, move it around and see what there is, and then go and start producing your contours that you might need. This is a very strange happened to my images, but very good. This is the Clifton Suspension Bridge. You may be familiar with it. Clifton's over on this side, Leeward's here. This buttress built up in masonry about 10 years ago. Somebody doing some maintenance on the deck lifted up a stone and there's a big hole here. there's a shaft that goes down. So there was there from there. You can see there's a shaft that right down to the depth of the abutment. And obviously they explored further and discovered that around the shaft there's this whole network of vaults. So the road comes up over the river, runs along the central vault, and over these two at the back and off behind. Now, nobody had thought, that's a massive abutment, nobody would have built it out of solid stone. But once you know they're there, you have to inspect them. You have to know they're safe, which is slightly out of mind. Just out of interest. We've got a laser scan in there. This was early in our photogrammetry exploration. We didn't know it was going to work in pitch dark. So we needed the geometric information as well. We've got laser scans about 45 gigabytes. Convert that into a textual image, 200 megabytes that we can load up on a normal PC. These models are about 200 megabytes as well per volt. This is 10 meters high. We come in through this tunnel, past this shaft, having gone up another tunnel that's similar, and come in from the other level through a ladder. A ladder in a shaft from there. At my height, you have to put your hand up before you get into it because you can't move your elbow through. We find if we look at the bottom bit and turn it around, we've got these things that there are cast iron ties between the walls that have been there since this was finished and closed, and they're packed with timber. You can see there were vertical timbers with just a bit missing in the middle. This was filled with water to here when it was discovered. And it was obviously a very stable level. It's moved up and down by about a foot. And the timber's rotted where that level is. There's now a hole down there that drains it. You can look up at the top and view along these things which are 10 metres up in pitch dark and see that tie is sagging quite badly. There's no tension in it. If we look at it, so it's now looking straight up at the soffit, we can see a crack. We didn't see that until we looked at the model. There's no way that by the time you've wriggled into that space, you're shining a torch up at the ceiling, that you're going to catch features like that. But once you've got this, that you can look at and take the time about, you can see things that you just wouldn't see otherwise. We can put a plane across here as well, in the horizontal plane. I've set that just round about the springing where the bolt starts turning in. We can turn it to a clipping plane and change the clipping direction. Look at an orthographic view from below. And then mix in colouring. So if we take the normal vector for every triangle and colour the mesh with that, we can very quickly see changes in angle. So you can see that although the shape of the vaulting plan, there's a curved side with corners, and that is carried right up onto the vaulting at the top. But we can also see very quickly that there are open stripes all around here. And in rough, there are steps and the angles in them. So we can start to learn that the walls were built up quite easily. Once they got to the top, they built freehand as far as they could. Because working up there, if you built a centre, you'd be trying to work out working with stones below your feet. So you stand on a platform, you build it up as far as it will go, and only at the very top you put the centre and finish it. So you can see it's smooth at the side, smooth at the top where they have the boards to work on. There's always roughness and job of masonry at the edges. And there are interesting things like this timber is embedded in the stone, so the stones actually slipped forward as they were building it, and we can get quarters to match up. We're going back there next week to do the top level, so those models that are at the bottom, we're going to go back in and do all the top ones. I'm a bit nervous about that because I realise as I was planning that not only are there fewer bolts down here, most of them are much lower as well, because the rocks come in to give you all from light. We've been developing a bit of extra kit to try and speed up the process and not have to do it like that. So developing an understanding of the picture that is really hard. Texture meshes are a lot more useful than point clouds in this respect, and that's not just if you're in the dark, where you can get colour out of flash photography. It's possible to get sub-millimetre details over very big structures in photos, and being able to take these snapshots in time at very high detail gives you an ability to revisit, whether it's just because you've thought of something and you need to go back and have a look, or because you're looking at it again in 6 years' time.